Hey there, good people. It's your girl Memphis Jones, and you are here with me on my channel, the Hey Dear Blog. Please excuse my voice. It's still working on getting back to normal from having a cold, but I didn't want to hold up any longer with showing you all my 2024 reading journal and my 2025 journal layout setup. Now, I want to temper your expectations here because I am not an artist by any means. Some people may say that I am an artist, but yeah, I don't draw. I'm still working on, how to use all of these crafty things that I keep buying. And this is nothing. I have books of stickers and things that I went to. And this is a hot take for you all. I went to Michael's the other day, actually last week, and they had a sale on Happy Planner sticker books for 40% off. So they were $19.99 a book, and they were 40% off. So I got 3 sticker book sets for $11 and some change. I can't remember exactly the number. But if you are looking to get you some sticker books, now is the time because those particular books were on sale. And I almost used one whole book on my setup for the 2025 book. But let's get started. As you know, I started with the Bibliophile Reader's Journal after I had already purchased one, but after I saw, I think it's called Reading with LaLa. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Some years back, she had done some various reading journals review. I think she did like 3 videos of them. Because the thing about me not being very artisty is that I needed something that was already set up that I could then just adapt it as I go. And I didn't start working on a reader's journal until I want to say it must have been early fall. So I had to go back throughout the year and complete my entries from January all the way through. And actually, I didn't finish completing all of the older entries until I want to say the week of January. First week of January. I was working hard on New Year's to try and complete this because I really wanted to get it done as early as possible. But it just wasn't working out that way. So anyway, let's just get started. So I really liked the Bibliophile book that I got when I was in Florida. Visiting American Beach and the surrounding beach areas, and I stopped by a lovely bookstore that they have there. I will link that bookstore below because I can't think of the name right now, but I did make a video while I was there, and that video I will be editing and uploading it because I really enjoyed meeting the staff there in that store. And they had a really nice outdoor space for coffee and whatnot. And they had a small barista situation set up inside of the store. And then upstairs on the second floor was like an artist exhibition space. So they really maximized the space that they had there for various community engagement activities. So I really, really enjoyed that bookstore. Anyway, I'll put some information on that. But getting started, I wanted to make an index page, and essentially it's not an index list. It's an index list, but it's a table of contents. An index is more or less, if you have a subject matter and then you have it in multiple pages, you can write your different page numbers. But in the way that this is done, it's more like a table of contents, because it's telling you where the entry should be for the book within the journal itself. So what you're seeing here is each book by title, and then audiobook, ebook, physical book. Now a lot of these, I have both the physical book and the audiobook, and I used both depending on if I was listening at work and then reading at home, different scenarios that made it where one method versus the other was more practical. So these are my lists, and I do have one correction here, and we'll get to that. But here it says 65, but one of the books I actually didn't complete until January. So it's still listed here because my intention was to complete it in 2024, but I ended up completing it in January. And so I went ahead and wrote that entry in here. Okay, so then I have my name here, my little nameplate screen. The thing I really like about the Bibliophile Reader's Journal is how much extra information you learn, and the recommendations that you get throughout the book that is included by the creator, Miss Jane Mount. Here you'll see my book tracker, and my initial thoughts here was to color each book based off of the book that correlates to the first, second, third, or fourth, and whether it's a memoir, which is green, fiction, red, self-help, blue, religious, yellow, nonfiction, orange, and poetry, brown. So as you can see here, there's a lot of red, and so I ended up, after this particular page, book tracker, I ended up changing my method in the second one that I have later on in the book. So here's my first entry. As you can see, I have a lot of things to say most of the time, even though nobody's reading it, and please God, I hope nobody ever tries to, because my handwriting is terrible. But after I wrote all of my entries in, I went back on the back end and used the different materials that I had that I felt fit the narrative or fit the color scheme of the books that I read. And even though I'm not really one for star ratings, I'm pretty much like highly recommend, read on your own, cognition, however you feel about it, or just pass it up kind of a situation. But I'm really not really into the star ratings, because I don't know how I feel about the star ratings. But I guess I could give the star ratings my own meaning. But at any rate, I did utilize them in my journal. I just don't give them out as a form of suggestions. But as you can see, I have Shadow the Sky, which is a memoir by retired Colonel Merrill Lord have mercy, Tingasdal. And how many times do I say her name and mess it up on this recording? But she is the only female black U-2 spy plane pilot to this date, and the plane is scheduled for retirement, so she will retain that title and forever. We got How Y'all Doing by Leslie Jordan, which is read and narrated by him, and it is the cutest thing to listen to if you're having a bad day. More examples, recommendations, not examples. This particular page is about books made into great movies. So sprinkle throughout both of these, you're going to find this kind of information, things that you wish you knew. We have The Bluest Eye, and for the most part, these books are in order of when they were read. I did manage to forget the very first book that I read of the year. I don't know what that says about the book itself, but I know for me, I ended up with COVID, the flu, and the respiratory issues last year, Christmas. From Christmas, I want to say up through until February, I was basically sick in 2024. So my reading journey started late. Now you see Gwendy's Button Box, and I did quite a review on Gwendy's Button Box last year as part of my Mayhem video. And so if you want to know more about Gwendy's Button Box and the mysterious man in the black hat, check that out. And this is the first book in a series, and I will be finishing that series this year. So I have the other 2 books. So I have all 3 books now in my on my shelf. So I will be finishing that series. Then I needed a palette cleanser, and so that's how we got The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And listen, I watched this movie, but I had never read the book. Why was that book so funny to me? I mean, laugh out loud funny to me. So if you get a chance and you just need something simple to read, check that out. The other 2 books that were part of my May Mayhem were Rage by Richard Bachman, which is the name that Stephen King wrote under. I think Stephen King may have been 17 when he wrote under that the name of Richard Bachman. Rage is essentially a book about I have a clock here. It's a ticking time bomb of a kid who is basically a school shooting book, but there's a lot of psychological backdrop to this book. And again, you can check out my May Mayhem video, and you'll also get more into Clockwork Orange. Again, a teenage kid who's mentally just not right. We're just gonna say that. There's a lot to that book, and it was mentally draining a bit. So again, I think when I finished those 3 books for May Mayhem, I turned around and read The Curious Case of Benjamin Button just for my palate cleanser. Mini Shopaholic was a cute book. It was a funny book, but I will tell you that I was wanting to pop this mom in this book upside her head multiple times, because she was the brat. The kid just was followed the lead of the mother. But in the end, the point of the matter is she loved her family very much. She just needed to work on herself. So it was the perfect book to listen to as an audiobook while we were traveling out of Florida. We were leaving Florida from being at a funeral, so we needed to lighten the load there. Then we have Dan Harris, 10% Happier. This is a memoir where Dan discusses how he ended up essentially self-medicating, not realizing that as a journalist he could also suffer from PTSD from being a war correspondent, and he had a really bad anxiety attack on air, and it was basically brought on by his drug use. And so part of him trying to figure out how to heal himself he ends up learning meditation, which he did not think would be something that was up his alley. You know, he's like, I am not a hippy dippy, you know, meditating, you know, kind of a guy, but his parents were, and they exposed him to it as a child, and he disliked it because of that. And so his whole thing about it was that I don't want to be part of that. So what he learned was this was how he was able to make himself just 10% happier, and 10% is better than 0. I also then listened to the Tao of Pooh, and many times I had to rewind this to considering the subject matter of this book, the fact that my mind kept racing off and doing other things while I'm walking on a walking path and trying to consume this information. My brain was not sticking with it. I listened to it as an audiobook, but then I turned around and purchased the Tao of Pooh and the Tea of Piglet so that I could actually focus, because I couldn't focus really listening to it. Wounds to Wisdom was more not self-help, but self-realization / spiritual, and it was also a slightly autobiographical. The author is a high school friend of mine, and if you're interested in the information gleaned from Wounds to Wisdom, we do have a interview in the podcast playlist with myself and Catherine discussing Wounds to Wisdom. Bull Dagger clutched my heart and crushed it and remolded it and tried to put it back in my chest, and then it came oozing back out and then pushed back in, and in the end I was able to heal my wound. But Bull Dagger is the story of a lesbian learning that she is a lesbian and learning better ways of self-defining, as she is also struggling with the aspects of defining for herself, coming out to family, defining what she will and won't accept, and fighting against other people trying to define what this is and what this means for her in her life. From childhood, young adulthood, and forward. People do often think they know what's best for you, and you have to sometimes separate yourself out and come to those realizations on your own terms, and then figure out what your next steps are going to be. A lot happened in this book, and again, I was reading this book as an ebook, and then I learned how to have the assisted application on my Android read it to me during a rainstorm, and some of the hardest parts to listen to was being read to me by AI during a rainstorm, and I could barely see on the highway, and I was like, I need to pull over. I think I'm in tears. I can't tell if it's the rain or me. So it's a lot to absorb. It's a lot to handle, but you can get this book on Kindle, and I highly suggest that you do, especially if you or someone you know is really struggling with self-defining, and would like to see what it looks like for someone to do it and come out on the other side of it, doing good. Next, I read Shadow in the Corner, and that was a buddy read online with a friend of mine over at Thistle and Thread. And this book, it was a Victorian book by Mary Elizabeth Braden, will make you want to slap somebody. The whole situation of how the young lady in this book ends the book just makes you want to hurt somebody, because all they had to do was listen. The Bullet Swallower was part of my June on the Range reading. I did read 3 books for that as well, but it took me longer than June. But The Bullet Swallower was so good to me. I really enjoyed this book. It's by a Mexican author, Mexican American, I believe. And pieces of it are kind of her family, her grandfather or great-grandfather. So she was able to take a family story and morph it into something bigger. But essentially this story is about the sins of the forefathers, and when do the sins of their forefathers come to bear? Is it at the time, or is it every generation, or is it several generations down, where the payment for the reaping of the seed that was sown, when does that come to pass? Who has to deal with that? That was really good. God's Country by Percival Everett was also a book that I enjoyed. Now, the start of this book, I was like kiki and cackling the whole time, and then things started to shift where I could see the lessons that Mr. Everett wanted us to grasp. I could see those lessons starting to meander their way through the discrimination, the racism, the system of master and slave. Even though this isn't a slave narrative, there are instances where the power dynamic has shifted and it's unfavorable to the white man in this book. And the point of the matter is, the white man needs the black man, and the black man has more common sense, book sense, money sense, all these things. And but he needs him, and he wants to keep him and need him until the very end. And the black man is like, tired now. I'm tired of you. And the way this book ends, the ending of this book crushed my spirit. So I started out laughing, and I was even telling my mom, this book is so crazy. It's just crazy. And by the end, I was like, Lord have mercy. No. No, it shouldn't have ended like that. Anyway, bring Bubba back. So then I put a little tip in here, a little thank you card from, again, Catherine Shorter, as I was preparing to put the interview that we did out. Shortly thereafter, her next book was published, and she made mention of this book, that she was working on a book during that interview. I had no idea that it was coming right on out. But this book here is a book of prayers, 52 prayers, breath prayers that you can utilize during meditative exercises. You breathe in on a scripture. You breathe in on a prayer and you exhale on the scripture. But the application and the affirmations are very simple, very easy. It's not a heavy lift at all. But the point of the matter is helping you to pray, giving you some leeway, something to lean on in prayer when it's a difficult time to do so. Then let's see. I read The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. I didn't know at the time when I started reading it that this was a series, but this book I found to be extremely interesting, and it was a great audiobook read, and the narrator, Lisa Flanagan, did a really good job on the different characters. But essentially, the Library of the Unwritten is in hell, and they have a librarian, and the job that they have there is to keep the characters that are in those books with their book. They can't be separated from their books. So, because without their book, they, I think, would, in our terms, die. But the concept is these books are either unwritten ideas or incomplete, but they exist. They exist, so they must be somewhere, and so that's where they are housed. I really hated this, but I couldn't get it out of my brain, and I couldn't not finish it, but I knew that I hated it. And I honestly, I guess that's what Caroline was going for, because this book make you want to slap somebody. I want to slap him, her, and everybody in their orbit, because I'm like, what kind of foolishness? Y'all crazy. That's how I felt about that. Y'all crazy. And this here is Editions of Pride and Prejudice. She's an artist, so she hand draws all of this. Her being Jane. Then on a road trip to Tennessee, I listened to the Audible original version of 1984, and it was really engrossing. So I turned right around and I listened to 1984 Julia, and oh my word, this book have your mouth hanging open as you are comparing and contrasting what she is saying to what he was experiencing. Julia is the girlfriend of Winston, who is in this book. The protagonist in this book is Winston. And so you see him going through all of this, having all of this stress and anxiety. He was the most nervous wreck of a man ever. And then here comes Julia, flittering and floating around, seemingly as if no care in the world, that she's just as bold as she wants to be. But by the time you get to the third act, you really learning a whole lot about Julia and how she got to be in Winston's orbit. And it's not all just because they work together. Then I have this book, but because I was in training, I switched over to listening to Objective Secure on audio. And it was narrated by the author, Nick Lavery, and a plus one whose name I can't remember right now. Nick is from Boston, so you have to really focus on the words that's coming out of his mouth, or you may lose yourself. But essentially, this book is about resilience and mental health, pushing through and overcoming, which is what he has done time and time again. Nick lost his leg due to a internal attack by an Afghani troop who was going through the training process with Nick's team and of Green Berets, and he was a traitor. He just turned around and attacked everybody. And then Nick was like, "Yo, I'm not done serving my country, so give me a leg and let me keep moving." And he had to do a lot to prove that he could do what he needed to do without being a hindrance to the team. You know, how do you maintain your status as an asset? You know, with the leg being gone. And Nick is not a little guy. He was really, really big, muscular, tall. So it's not like you got, you know, somebody small that you got to carry with you or something. Yellowback Radio Broke Down is the third book that I read for June on the Range, and I didn't finish it until August. This book was the craziest fever dream, LSD infused foolishness of a book that I have ever read. And yeah, you can hit up Goodreads. Maybe they'll explain it to you better, but oh child, it's so much. It's too much. Bits and Pieces is Whoopi Goldberg's most recent memoir about her mother and her brother. The three of them, how interconnected they were, but also the ways that they overcame struggles as a family, to include when her mom had a mental breakdown and was placed in a mental health facility. And Whoopi later learned from her mother that they did the electroshock treatment on her mom. And when her mom came home, she actually did not know who they were, and she had to relearn her children. But she was. So my recording stopped. I'm not sure that you all got everything that I said about Bits and Pieces, but essentially Whoopi Goldberg's latest memoir about her mother, her brother, the things that they overcame growing up. But she also talks about the things that they did for fun, going to Coney Island, various plays and things, how, you know, her mom handled the family and took care of things as a single parent, but also how her and her brother was able to manage when her mom had a mental breakdown and was placed in a mental health facility, given electroshock treatments. And when she was finally released and continued to raise her children, she later advised them as they were adults that she actually did not remember them and did not know who they were when she was released. And essentially they retrained her and retaught her how to mother them, the things they liked and didn't like, and so on and so forth. It's a great book. I have it physical and audiobook. The Librarianess was a really nice read. This book follows an elderly man, Bob Comment, who was a librarian, met his wife working at the library, met his best friend also working at the library, and he was always like the glue that held this little trio together. Well, one thing led to another, and his best friend ran off with his wife. So he just lived his life on his own terms, you know, by himself, working in the library. And when he retired, he had his routine, which he was maintaining. But then he ended up going to a store and finding a lady who was lost and mentally did not have the capability to get herself back to where she lived. And that is how this story starts. It's really, there are funny parts. There are really poignant and touching parts. There's a lot to learn about forgiveness in this book. I think you will enjoy it. It's a good palate cleanser book as well. The Archive of the Forgotten is the next book in the trio from A.J. Hackwith. And essentially, in hell, you have multiple wings of this library system, and this library system isn't only in hell. You have other aspects of the different library wings based off of times in history, you know, the Greeks and the Romans, and you know, and they have all these ways of getting to and fro into each other's time, not really time zones, but other worlds, getting into each other's worlds in order to, can you imagine an inner library loan system between like what is it, the Library of Alexandria before it was burnt down, and a library, you know, housed in hell that has like a lot of Victorian or something, but you want to borrow a scroll. I need to borrow a scroll from the Library of Alexandria. Anyway, that's the kind of vibes you get from this whole series, because they are traveling through different portals into other worlds, parallel or past versus present, to try and stop hell from absorbing the library system itself. And it's really important that they are able to stop what's happening. And in this particular book, Claire, who is the protagonist and the primary protagonist in all three of these books, is no longer the primary librarian like in the previous book that I mentioned. But in this one, she has been moved to the archives, and the new librarian is Claire's former assistant. And they are really working hard at, you know, giving each other the space that they need. See, we have an elderly lady is up to no good. Oh, Lord. This lady is 88, I think, and she will take you down. Period. Point blank. If she think that you are trying to get over on her or someone that she cares about, she gonna handle you. The Wood at Midwinter was a digital arc for me. And this is also, it's a short novella, and it's also a really good palate cleanser. It's also a bit of this is a winter read. Midwinter, it's a winter read for certain. It's a very, very the protagonist in this book talks to nature, and not just the animals, but also the woods themselves, and she talks to them and she listens and hears. But in this particular book, I feel like she heard it, but she didn't heed the warning that was coming to her from the creatures. The storied life of A.J. Fikry is really good. It's a nice nice read. It keeps you absorbed. And then what I later found was a movie adaptation of this book came out in 2022. But this book was such a nice read. The poor protagonist in this book, AJ, man, if it wasn't one thing, it was another coming at him, and he was already suffering from depression. But everything that happened was interconnected to something else. And the thing about lies is lies come back, and sometimes they come back and they hurt you as the liar, and sometimes they come and they affect people who had nothing to do with your lie. And that's how I feel AJ, he didn't deserve what was happening to him. He just was dealing and tolerating and making it, waking up every day. But the found family that was around him was his reward. And that's how I feel like that book, I feel like that was the lesson. The found family around you is the reward for the shitty life you may have. That's my story, and I'm sticking. Then I got The Strange, Dark, and Mysterious by Mr. Ballin. If you follow podcasts at all, you've likely heard of Mr. Ballin. He has a way of telling a story that is like no other, and you can end up binging on just listening to him talk about these different stories that are strange, dark, and mysterious. One or the other, all three, doesn't matter. The Bookstore Sisters, this was this is a Kindle book, and it's really short, so the storyline moves really fast, and I will say that a lot happened in a short time, which probably had my mind spinning just slightly, because I was like, okay, y'all, slow down. But essentially, these sisters were estranged after their father and their mother passed. The mother passed from cancer. The father passed in debt, trying to maintain a bookstore that the one daughter ran away from, and the other daughter, being the more dutiful one, stays to try and maintain the bookstore. And in doing so, she has a family. She has a daughter. Husband dies. The daughter, comes into her own personality as a teenager and requests that her aunt come back home to help her sister because she injured herself. In that time, they were able to heal this family and heal the relationship between one another, and that's how this book starts, and it rolls into another book, and a third one is coming out. I want to say the end of January, but it may be early February. But the stories roll so fast, you're pretty much hooked into seeing what's going on. So I found both of these stories to be really interesting. But what happens is the dutiful sister ends up with cancer, just like the mother. So she ends up going through treatments. The other sister who had run away decides to stay, and they do a really good job of maintaining the bookstore. And so essentially they're doing what their father wanted them to do, which was to be together and maintain the bookstore. They find these old recipes that their mother had, and they start back to baking the recipes from the mother. And so that brings in more income to sustain the store. And they're able to deal with the cancer treatments, the store. They both find love. Everybody's happy. We'll see what the third book has to say. The God of Lost Words by A.J. Hackworth is the last of the series for the Hales Library series. I didn't really care for this particular book as much. I don't know. They had like a love triangle situation going with Claire, and then one of the characters, the character from the first book that they ended up trying to chase to put back in his book because he's separated from his book, ends up without his book forever, but he didn't die. And what they started to realize is that the reason that the books are so valuable is because there's a portion of soul that the author leaves with the book. That is the power that all of these libraries maintain, pieces of soul, and that's what hell wants. That's how hell grows. And so that is the battle there. The Story Collector I got as an ARC, and I really, really enjoyed this book. This book takes you through the journey of a young lady running from her life, trying to start over from a failing marriage, and in a drunken stupor, she ends up buying a flight to Ireland instead of to Newark, and a whole not a mystery, but while she's out and about taking a jog, she finds a book, and this book timeline lines up almost perfectly with 100-year separation to her timeline. And she's able to not only heal herself, but heal some of the local families with that information from that book. Angel in the Rubble is the story of Janelle Guzman McMillan, her survival as the last surviving person to be found in the wreckage of the World Trade Center on 9/11. Really profound book. I was glad to be able to read that in honor of September 11th and the souls lost, and the souls still being lost due to exposure. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. This book just had my mind slightly blown. It's amazing you don't know what's happening to the pieces of your body that you leave in little specimen cups. That's all I'm going to say on that. And in doing so, you could be making somebody rich because some portion of your body may be so amazing that they continue harvesting that and selling it so that other people can use it to study with. That's what this is about. Laziness does not exist. This was more of a self-help book that basically tells you that laziness is a result of something underlining issue. Could be mental health, could be some form of burnout, so on and so forth. Sonnets for a Missing Key is Percival Everett release of poetry, but he utilizes musical notes as the driving factor throughout this book. If I knew more about music, I would probably have a much better way of explaining it. But it was really deep information that he was putting in these poems. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Mama, would you sleep? Would you sleep? Your eyes are red. Sasha's here. An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed is the second book from Helen Turnstone. This book and the previous book I mentioned about the elderly lady, they go hand in hand, because this second book actually tells you a little bit more about why Maud is whacking people and how she got to the point of being able to do it and do that so proficiently. And she also saves a young lady at the end of this book. Bye, baby. But you know, with anything, there's always something that got us started. The other thing I want to note about these books is you see the colors that are behind each book cover, each one of them. Pay attention to that, because it'll come back up. The Lost Apothecary, I enjoyed this book. This book, a young lady essentially goes to London to celebrate her wedding anniversary, but she goes by herself because her husband is a cheating slug, and she finds out about his cheating right before they're supposed to get on the plane. Not only is he a cheater, but he is also a manipulator, which you'll learn as you're reading the book. And he makes his way to London anyway to try and win her back. The way he goes about it, almost kills himself. That's how crazy this. He ain't crazy. He crazy like a fox. But her story parallels with another story that she ends up uncovering, an apothecary's bottle on her first day there while she's on a touring mudlarking adventure excursion, which gives her something to focus on, but also almost ends her put in jail. Sleeping Beauties I got as an arc, but it was a graphic novel. The Strange, Dark, and Mysterious was a graphic novel arc also. Thanks NetGalley for both of these arcs. But this right here was really something. It was very well done as a graphic, because you can be looking at these pictures and like, man, this is really bloody. But you know, if you're really paying attention to the pictures and the words, the Sleeping Beauties have been taken over by Mother Nature and brought into an alternate universe of sorts where they could either stay and rebuild or wake back up and go home. They had everything that they needed because some of the women were pregnant that went to sleep and ended up in this alternate universe, parallel world. You had medically trained women, you had cops, you had tech women in tech. You had everything that you needed because all of the women, if they dozed off, they didn't wake up. And so they were building things and fixing things in order for everyone to be able to live comfortably until they figured out what was happening to them. Once it was understood what was happening in the normal earth, as the women were going under, the men started losing their mind and basically started burning up stuff, blowing stuff up. Because you know what? Yeah, men. And then the next series that I started in on is the Mahalia Watkins series. Mahalia Watkins and her cousin Wavon Hicks were Maryland girls, starving murders like what is that, Murder, She Wrote. Out here cooking up good stuff in the restaurant, finding dead people, and solving murders. That's essentially what all of these Mahalia Watkins books are about. Unspeakable, the story of Junius Wilson. This book was actually written by Susan Birch and Hannah Joyner. If you know Hannah Joyner, that's Hannah from Hannah's Books. This book, Mr. Wilson was he was arrested for a false rape claim and held in mental hospital, because he was deaf and mute. And so what was being done with individuals who had anything of that nature wrong with them, they would put them in mental facilities that were basically run like plantations, because you were going to work, you were going to field hand for free, and because they never charged him, they could never release him. There was nothing mentally wrong with him, but they never proved his innocence, so he could never leave where he was. And so this book this goes through the process of learning and exploring what happens when a person's ability to communicate is completely cut off, and how do they navigate life. That's what this is about. It's very well done, well researched. Got some more Mahalia Watkins, Murdered with Collard Greens. Whatever the food is that is in the title, that food comes up as being the favorite food of someone in the book, and usually that someone is the person who ends up dead. Murder with Honey and Ham, biscuits. Oh, the other thing about the Mahalia Watkins books is that they give you recipes throughout the book. So I essentially need to go and get these, because I listen to these as audiobooks, and man, was I laughing. Ooh. But I need to go back and find the physical books so I can get the recipes, because some of these recipes I definitely wanted. The eyes are the best part. Child. Again, I hated the book. I did not enjoy the book, but I could not stop listening to the book because it had me. It clinched me. It had me. It had me. I think what happened to this young lady is that she was having a mental breakdown. We learned that she had a brain tumor towards the end of the book, and I think that between the stress she was under and the brain tumor caused her to have a very weird psychological situation. That's where I'm gonna go with that. Galatea, really great book, short story, mythical story where, and I don't know all these names, but essentially what do you call it? A stonemason builds his perfect wife, and somehow she becomes a human-like, and he has a baby with her, and then he puts her in a holding, not a hospital, but basically a place that is managed by a doctor and nurses, and plays out his fantasies essentially with her, and she figures out how to manipulate the situation and to free herself, her child, and honestly from him. And as you can see, I have a little water here because she takes him down. Not My Father's Son by Alan Cumming. So Alan Cumming, we know Alan Cumming from PBS, but man, this memoir, and he narrates this. I listened to this as an audiobook. He narrates this. This had me in my feels. It really did, because it reminded me of how I felt when I learned that my stepfather was not my actual father, and I was damn elated. I was elated because he was a very mean man, and that's what we learned about Alan Cumming's father, is that he was a really, really mean man, and the things he did to Alan, because he claimed that he thought Alan wasn't his. Wow. I mean, to look at Alan on PBS, you would not think he was going through what we learn about in this book. Assembly. First of all, I had to listen to this book twice, and it's not a big book. It's a 2-hour audio, but it was a lot packed into this 2-hour audio, essentially describing what it takes to be a successful Black woman, and in the UK for her, but it could be anywhere. The training that we get about being the best that we can possibly be, and then exceed that. Get this certificate and this diploma and this and this and this and this, and you're just constantly doing more, being more, to get to this height that you think is going to give you all of the things that you want in life. To pull back the curtain from what you think is being withheld on the other side. It's an assembly of self. But what this young lady learns in this is what is it giving you outside of more? What is it giving you in the terms of emotional, spiritual connect? What is it doing for you in other aspects of your life, to constantly just keep striving for these rings? Yeah. Horror store. Man, I'll never look at an IKEA the same. Boy. This kind of gave me poltergeist feelings, because it's like you built this store over a haunted ground, and because those spirits aren't rested, they just keep coming back and taking more, and they just keep rebuilding, apparently, right on top of places, not just the one mentioned here. When you get to the end of the book and you start to see that other people have gone missing from other stores. Lincoln in the Bardo. Now, when I put this page together, I did not notice that right here the book was mentioned. I thought that was kismet. And I wrote here, just noticed this after having read the book. And while writing the review, I literally looked over and saw that. But Lincoln in the Bardo, it was good. It was good, because it takes you a minute to realize that the conversations that you're listening to are dead people in a cemetery who don't realize that they're dead, and they won't use language that leads to discussing that they are dead. They call it their sick box, which is their coffin. They just have other ways of discussing things. But I find it's a very visual book, because the people are very well described, but you're also getting snippets of history being read out about, like, President Lincoln and how his children were, how the household was run, things like that. So it's a historical fiction about President Lincoln and the struggle that he went through when his child Willie Lincoln died from being sick. The Uncommon Reader. I'm not sure exactly if I heard about the Uncommon Reader from Hannah's Books or a different booktuber. Whoever it was made me get this book just by their conversation about it. And it's a very small novella of a book, but it was so it's a reader's book. It's compelling because what you're experiencing is the queen learning to love books, and it's bothering everybody else. Alright. The Women is about women nurses learning about war while being in war during Vietnam. These women experienced explosions. They experienced bodies in various states of exposure. Exposure meaning like parts of the body that's not supposed to be seen with the eyes. Intestines and things that have been, let out of their casing, I guess you could say. And these women are helping the men doctors to put things back and sew people up and get them to the point of being able to get them out of theater. Living through bombs, and then by the end of their shift, they having a beer at the O Club. It's like, how do you go from one to the other? But that's the way that they lived. And then when they get home, they don't know how to cut off the instincts to respond, to certain noises and certain actions without possibly overreacting. And when they realize that, hey, I need help, the VA says, women weren't there. Women weren't on the front line, and send them away. Or if they make it to a meeting, it's full of men, and the women are triggering for them. So essentially, there is no help for them. That's what that book is about. I apologize for the refrigerator, the heater, the dog, mom, everything. Small things like these. I'm sure that you've heard about this book many times now. But this book is about wintertime, and the protagonist in this book is he has a business where he sells coal and wood, different things for heating, and he delivers to a nunnery, only to learn that this particular place is where girls who are pregnant out of wedlock end up. And the whole town is like, hey, don't ruffle feathers there. It could go wrong for you. A Psalm for the Wild Built. It's the monk and robot being friends, learning new things. I did not know that monks curse or that they were LGBTQ+. I don't know what I thought this book was gonna show me. I knew it was LGBTQ plus, but I didn't know in what context. And this monk, sibling Dex, he's unhappy. But if he like you, y'all may be girlfriend and girlfriend or boyfriend and boyfriend. No. But I actually enjoyed it because it was kind of calming. It was a kind of a strange, calm read. And I think what made it that was the conversations that the monk had with Moscap, the robot, as he was trying to figure out why he was feeling the way he was feeling. And the robot asked some really thought-provoking questions. Mr. Dickens and his Carol, I enjoyed this. And the narrator, Evan Morton, was exceptional. Very, very well done. Mr. Dickens is struggling financially because his last book was a crapper and wasn't doing well. Coming up on Christmas time, I got bills to pay. My kids want all the toys that they got their hands in it, and the man at the toy store wants me to give money to some charity. Everybody wants something from me, and he snaps. His wife does not like this, and so she just cancels Christmas and packs the kids up, and off to Scotland they go, because that's apparently where she's from. In this book, Mr. Dickens goes back to a hotel that he used to live in to write instead of writing at home. He figures that this place will give him what he needs to pull it together, because his publishers want a Christmas book and they want it ASAP. And he went from I don't want to do it to I guess I gotta do it because contracts, you know. But it's really interesting because we all know the story of the Christmas Carol, but the way this book explores it is exploring how the Christmas Carol came about, how the characters came about, how the names of the characters came about, elements of Mr. Dickens, how they made their way into the Christmas Carol, how the implication of the ghost came to be part of it, and it's all based off of all the things that he's going through and dealing with as he tries to push this book out. Really, really good book. I'll probably listen to this for Christmas again. The Obituary Writer was not on my radar to read. I literally was just looking. I may have been looking for something else, and this came up as one of the suggested things in my search on Libby, and I'm glad it did. I'm really glad it did. Oh, because I was looking through Libby and I didn't know that there was an earphones award. And when I saw that, it made me just flip through other earphone award recipients. So that's how I got to this book. But essentially, the protagonist is an obituary writer. But the story, she's an obituary writer by profession, but the story is about her life before she became an obituary writer, and who she was with, and this great love that after I think it's an earthquake that came that changed the trajectory of her whole life, And that's how she ended up becoming an obituary writer. But what you're really learning is about how she got to that point. A Matter of Inches, I did not finish this book, but I know so much about Clint Malarchuk, the writer. This is his memoir because he came and did a talk about the importance of managing your mental health, speaking up, and doing the things that you are prescribed to do before you get to the point of self-harm. Because Clint Malarchuk was a goalie in the NHL who, during a game, got sliced across the jugular and was essentially bleeding out. He was saved by the goalie who had been a Vietnam. He had been in Vietnam, so he knew what to do. Saves his life. Clint does everything he can to come back well before his allotted time. But what he's failing to do is to handle the mental stressors that he continues to put himself under. This memoir goes back to his childhood all the way forward. So the part we all know about, the injury and how he came back, and his recklessness throughout the rest of his life that leads him to try and take his own life. The bullet went in, but it failed to kill him. He's starting from the childhood stressors, how his body reacted to stress, the father, the alcoholism, the womanizing, everything that was happening in the childhood that led up to this is my safe place is on the ice, and I must be on the ice at all costs, regardless of anything else. Sisters in Arms. This was a good book. Sisters in Arms is about 2 female Black Army officers assigned to the 6th AAA Postal Battalion. So this is historical fiction, because currently a movie is now out as of December about the 6th AAA and how they were given this monumental task to go overseas and fix the backup of mail that is essentially in a warehouse space, and figure out where this mail is supposed to go. Some of the stuff was written in not full names, and so they had these processes of figuring out a town, a unit from a particular town, what record do we have about everybody who came from that town with this name, and then they group that stuff together. And then if they find someone who is a friend of some from the same area and they found their letter, maybe they mention each other's names in those letters. I mean, the cross-checking that they had to do to figure this out is amazing, but that is not the brunt of this story. The main point of this story is looking at these 2 women, how they were, raised. One was raised to go to Juilliard, and the other one, father ran a newspaper. And she was a journalist, but she wasn't doing the kind of stories that she wanted. So both of them was running away from the life that was being prescribed to them by their parents and ran straight into the Army. The other thing that's really interesting about one of the protagonists in this book being from a newspaper, Black-owned newspaper family, is that in real life, there is a Black-owned newspaper that I can't remember if it's out of Baltimore. I think it's a Baltimore newspaper. And yes, let me see. It's a Baltimore, I think, newspaper. I have a copy of it. The Afro-American, established in 1892. The owners of this paper have a connection directly to the 688 because their daughter was one of the 688. And I learned that last year while attending a talk about journalism in Black communities, and how Black newspapers and white newspapers may report about the same thing but report from a different angle, and how sometimes you needed both so you can get the full story. That makes sense. But the relationship between the two protagonists in this story, Grace Steele and Eliza Jones, is really the point of the story here. The next book, A Prayer for the Crown Shot. So this is the second book of the duology of the Robot and the Monk book series. And I'm trying to think. I feel like I felt differently about this book versus the first one, because what we're starting to see is the robot. In the first book, the robot seemed to be he was the more optimistic between the two because everything was new to him. In this book, everything is still new to him, but he's also trying to figure out his purpose or his why. Whereas in the first book, he was trying to help sibling Dex find his why. Whereas his initial question is, what was his question? What can I do for you? I think it was, or how can I help you? That in this book, that question gets turned on the robot by the monk's father when they go to visit. And I think it really sets his mind to working overtime, because he was essentially like, how is it that I have been set out on the mission to find what you need, what you want, and I can't even define that same question for myself. Things to make you go, because that was deep. And here we have more art. This is beautiful contemporary covers. And she just does a really great job of drawing these out, hand drawing these out. The community, as I stated, was meant to be read and completed in December, and I have the audio and the ebook for this, and I started out with the ebook and ended with the audio. I had to start sections of it over again just so that I could really absorb what was being stated. But essentially, this is a memoir written by Jamila Chisholm, and what she is talking about is how her family ended up following Dwight York. So this is real life cult, basically a Muslim cult, but Dwight York has the ability to change and morph so that people can constantly buy into the crap he's selling. And I think what Jamila was discovering is the question was really, how do really intelligent people end up in these places? And once they're in there, why is it so hard to leave when they realize that it's foolishness, And there are many reasons. There's belonging. There's it's like being in a gang. It's really not the best place for you to be. But the fact of belonging, the safety in numbers, having someone who's supposed to have your back, even if you feel like that's not true, they really don't. But the appearance of having a team or a crew or a newfound family, you got to be careful. Not all found family is good. Some found family can be detrimental. It could be, the downfall of you and your family. But I ended up finishing it in January. But because I started out in December, and actually I started the book earlier in the year. I can't even remember when I started it, but it was too deep for me at the time, so I put it on the back burner. And then I came around to try and finish it, and ended up finishing the second half of it in the new year. Anyway, Jacob T. Marley. I really enjoyed this book. It took a minute for me to get there, but once I was in there, I was in there, because this book tells you more about Jacob Marley, how he got to. He had a good childhood, and he was named after his grandfather, who lost his life saving a bunch of kids from a workhouse, and ended up dying, trying to save the last one. And even when they found the both of them in the wreckage, he was still holding on to the child under his coat to try and save him. Jacob somehow got off the tracks, and started to believe more in his ability personally, period. And ended up, being more concerned with making his fortune. Cut his family off, moved away, never married. And he was a slumlord. He ended up meeting Scrooge at his sister's funeral. And if you recall the movie, Scrooge had a nephew, Fred, whose sister died in childbirth. Well, the reason she died in childbirth was because Jacob Marley put her and her husband out of the house because they couldn't pay the bills. And she was so headstrong, she didn't want to tell her brother that she couldn't pay the bills. So they just left. And then she ended up having a baby on the street. And then she dies. So, you're learning the backstory of the relationship between the two of them, but you're also learning that after Jacob, right as Jacob is dying, he is trying to verbalize to Scrooge that, hey, I forgive you and I hope you forgive me. That simple act saved him from hell, essentially. But when we meet him, he appears to be that he was in chains, and those chains are the chains that he made himself. So he had money boxes and keys and locks all over him, but it was because he requested to be able to suffer this fate in order to help Scrooge see the error of the ways of them both, and save him from having a fate like his own. And last but not least, I read A Different Kind of Christmas by Alex Haley. And this was a kind of a deep book. It's not a Christmas book. It just happens to be that the book ends. The ending of the book is at Christmas time. It is a slave narrative. It is a book detailing the growth of a young man, a young Southern man who is attending Princeton, and he's trying to finish his education quickly, and he befriends some Quakers. He's allowing himself to meet people and hang out with people that his dad wouldn't normally approve of. Southern North Carolina, because the point of the matter is the Quakers didn't believe in enslavement, and but he befriends these three Quaker brothers who take him to their home in Philly. On the way there, he meets different cultural different people from different cultures, German, Italian, and this was amazing to the boy, because this was something that he wanted to experience. But then when he met a freed black man, his anger was sparked, and from there, the Quaker boys and their family end up taking him to a rally where he got to see, runaway slaves, and then he learns about the Underground Railroad. But all of this information does something to him. When he goes back, he kind of isolates himself, and then he ends up doing a lot of research and learning about things that he had seen and been exposed to. Exposure does a lot to change the minds of people, and that exposure sent him down a rabbit hole of self-learning, which sparked his desire to join the Underground Railroad. And the mission he was given was to go home and meet up with his peer conductor and free some of the slaves right there on his daddy's farm. And that is what we are experiencing in this book, with the culmination of the activity happening on Christmas. All right, so that's 65 books. Now, we're at the second tracker page, and as you can see, it's a lot more colorful, and that is because I stopped trying to color by genre, and whatever the color scheme was that I put behind the cover, that is what you see here. So I matched these books to whatever color I had behind the cover here in these. Now I have a little table of contents here so I can remember what I put where back here, and yes, that goes from 69 to 66 because I got my numbers mixed up. But we got books to check out. So these are some books that I want to add to my reading list for 2025. I wrote that in here, but then I turned around and read it. But the rest of these, Framed by John Grisham, I want to read this. It's a nonfiction novel about innocent people versus corrupt justice system. John Grisham is always writing about the justice system. And then I have a section here about my YouTube journey. These are just, this is just screenshots of all of my thumbnails, and then I put it here, put a little decorative borders around it. Again, I tell y'all, nothing about me is artistic, okay? Then I was learning about Dutch doors and such, and I made me a little Dutch door here. So this is, the about page, my numbers for the year, and some little notes that I started to write here. This is part of my description box that I put in every video to learn more about me. Wrote some thoughts and feelings here, and these stickers I got from Amazon, my page covers here, and more covers from my thumbnails, the links from my page on YouTube, and the rest of my thumbnails. So that's all of my thumbnails. I believe I got them all on there. Some more art from Miss Jane, and then these are books I want to read in 2025. So these books are migrated over, and actually this one is done because this is the community about the memoir about the Muslim cult. So this is completed January 2025. But these are books that I was supposed to read, and I think I'm gonna end up DNFing this book. I started and stopped, and I don't think I'm gonna deal with that book. But these were supposed to finish in 2024, but I didn't. So these are migrated, which is different from the books I have here. These books I have not read at all. So no portion of these books have been read. These I want to check out, and these I need to finish. These are books that I got for digital arts from NetGalley and or Edelweiss that are 2025 completions on this side, and these are 2024 completions. So I'm working from this side now. This side migrated into 2025, but these are all completed. This is a reading challenge that I'm not sure that I completed every bit of them. I didn't research them to see. This I for sure didn't do. Read a book that was published in the year you were born. Read a book that has won a Pulitzer Prize. I may have. I didn't look to just make sure. Read a book recommended by a friend or family member. I've done this. Done that because 3 of these books were written by friends. 3 of the books in here were written by friends. So read a book that has been adapted into a play. I don't know that any of these particular books have, oh yeah, Christmas Carol, that's been adapted into many plays. But Mr. Dickens' Carol is still a Christmas Carol. Between that and Jacob Marley, read a book that has won a Nobel Prize in literature. I'm not sure if any of the books that I read have won a Nobel Prize in literature. I don't think so. Read a book that is a classic of the literary canon. I don't think any of those 65. Read a book that has been on your to-read list for a long time. None of those were on my to-read list a long time. Read a book that is set in a different cultural context than your own. Yeah. If a monk and a robot ain't a different cultural context, I don't know what it is. Read a book that is recommended by a book club or reading group. I'm sure several of these books were recommended, but I don't know offhand Claire Keegan's book. It's a Oprah book club rec. Okay. That's not too bad. Ideas and inspirations. I wrote down various quotes. Some more quotes. I'm telling y'all, nothing about me is artistic. I just was like, I'm so funny. Ideas and inspirations. I wrote some ideas about, what videos to do for end of the year. I wrote some reading goals for 2025. And then this is my reading list, so it shows what month I read things in here. And what's so funny is the book that I read in January, How to Accidentally Settle Down. I don't even think I may literally have skipped this book. I skipped it multiple times. That's funny. That is really funny. I don't even have it listed, which is ridiculous because that means I'm not counting it, and I should definitely be counting it. So that's so crazy. That book, that girl was moving too fast through life and ended up leaving the country. Well, she was Canadian and ended up going to the UK with her live-in boyfriend, and eventually having to leave him with the child and returning back to Canada and starting her life over. And in doing so, she ends up running back into her high school sweetheart, who was really good to her. I forget how they ended up breaking up at this point, but in the end, she accidentally settles down with her high school boyfriend. But during the book, I was like, Lord have mercy, honey, because she becomes a comedian, and the boyfriend that she moved with overseas just wasn't pulling his weight. And then he had an issue with her, being on the road and whatnot. So according to this, I read 63 books in 2024. And I think it's actually 64. Yeah. I think it's actually 64 because I can't count the community because I didn't finish it in 2025, and I was going back to reread Remarkably Bright Creatures, but I didn't get around to it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know, maybe it is 63. Anyway, my series tracker, you got the Gwendy's Button Box trilogy that I will be finishing book 2 and 3 in 2025. So we finished this one. This one is incomplete. This one is incomplete. The Library of the Unwritten trilogy. Those 3 were all complete and documented here. All right. Yeah, that love triangle that started to develop between the lady The Book Hero and The Fallen Angel was just getting to be too much. The Book Hero just needed to sit down. He was doing the most. The Bookstore trilogy, I've gotten 2 of the 3. I forget what the 3rd one would be named, but I will add it in here just so it's there. But it'll be read in 2025 when it's released. The Elderly Lady duology, man, that was really good. I highly suggest this, especially as a palate cleanser, because you're just like, dude, how is she not caught by now? And she is so vain with her strength and abilities versus her age. She's like, look. Yep, all 40s. The Mahalia Watkins Soul Food Mysteries. If you need something to listen to for on a road trip, I highly suggest these because they are funny. And if you are from Maryland, it's even funnier, or from the DMV period, because you know some of these places that they are discussing. Okay, then I have thrifting bookstores to visit. Some I visit frequently, and some I would like to visit, like Second Story Books in Rockville, Maryland. It's a huge warehouse. McKay's Books in Manassas, Virginia is a well-stocked and well-organized because they have a electronic card catalog at the store. Second Story Books in Washington, D.C. is a much smaller version of this because it's really just a bookstore size store, but you can find some really great stuff in there. I haven't made it to the Book Trader in Philadelphia. I haven't made it to Burke's Books, Second Edition Books, or the Episcopal Bookshop in Memphis, Tennessee, but I will. And last but not least, the John K. King used bookstore in Michigan is on my to hit up list because it is huge. My Hall of Fame here, you probably already know because it's this big old Small Things Like These, The Story Life of A.J. Vickery, The Women, Unspeakable, The Life of Junius Wilson, The Henrietta Lack Story, 1984 Julia, Bull Dagger, The Bullet Swallower, The Bluest Eye, The Story Collector, The Community, Lincoln and the Bardo, Remarkably Bright Creatures, and Mr. Dickens and His Carol. Yes, I read this in 2023, meant to reread it in 2024, and I didn't reread it in 2024, but that don't mean it is not in my Hall of Fame. These are terms that I pulled these terms from the Unlikely Reader. It was just full of words that I was like, Lord, dictionary please. So I wrote them down, but I didn't write the definitions down for all of them, and I'm going to do that before I close this book out. My DNF list, these books I let go of. Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered. I listened to this on audiobook, and I think I fell asleep listening to it at some point because I was listening to it while I was driving to work, back and forth from work, and then I tried to finish it, and I couldn't tell you what the end result of this book was, but it's essentially a memoir by the 2 ladies who... My Favorite Murder, I think, is the name of their podcast. Love their podcast. Couldn't connect with the book, and it may just be that I just wasn't in a place to hear the horrors of their upbringing, because that's what I think that basically was. Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein, I wasn't keeping up with this, and I had to DNF it because I was like, is everybody just high? Are we actually getting somewhere in this book, or are we back to the place were y'all just drinking and eating, and I don't know what was happening here. The Bookkeeper's Apprentice. I liken this to when you're reading the Bible and you keep falling asleep and you got to keep rereading the same passage. That's how I felt with this book. So I had to DNF it. The Drawl Club, I'm just going to have to come back to it at another time and reread the portions of it that I didn't get to. I listened to this on audio, read portions of it that were missing from the audio because I was listening to, I think, an abridged copy, and as I was listening, I was trying to read at the same time and realized that portions of what I was seeing in the book was not being read. And then I just kind of lost my desire to keep trying to figure out where the audiobook was stopping so that I can re-find it in the physical book when I got back from wherever I was, because I was usually driving and listening. Frankenstein in Baghdad is not really DNF'd, but I was reading it and then I ended up starting something else and forgot to pick this up, so I'll have to come back around to it. But it was DNF'd in 2024. I'll pick it back up in 2025. And How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. I started this book and I don't know, something about the beginning just kind of, my brain just shut off and I couldn't pick it back up. So somehow I never got bingo. I never got bingo this way. I never got bingo this way. I never got it this way. I never got it this. You see this? 1. Of course, here, nope. Across here, nope. I mean, how is that possible? Oh, I did read outdoors. I did that. These books. And still, with those new exes, no freaking bingo. Are you kidding me? Whatever. Get on with your life. Alright, and then you got like bookish recommendations all the way through the end here. And then on the very back, you have my 2024 book bracket. So you have January, February, 1 out. March, April, March 1 out. And between these two, got the bluest eye. And then you got May and June 1 out. July, August 1 out. For that quarter, you got 1984 Julia. You got September to October, September 1. November, December, November 1. Third quarter, Kristen Hannah, the women. So, first quarter, Bluest Eye. Second quarter, Julia. Third quarter, Kristen Hannah. And then you got a wild card because I only have 1, 2, 3 quarters. And then I have a wild card, and the wild card is a story collector because I really enjoyed it. Between quarter 1 and quarter 2, Julia wins out. I know a lot of people are like, what? But I really enjoyed Julia. Kristen Hannah against the story collector. Kristen Hannah wins. Finalist, Julia. That was my reading review of 2024-2025. What I have included in here that's different is 2025 bookish holidays. I found a list online from 2024 and followed the author who wrote it and was able to get her 2025 list. I will link that below. I tore this page out, and I have done everything I can to washi tape this in as like a tip in this page. And I refuse to let this page go. I just will keep taping stuff in here literally until something holds, because I'm not giving it up. Nope, nope, nope. Nope, nope, nope. I'm not letting it go. You just hang in there. You just hang in there. Anyway, I have my nameplate in this one, and I have my reading goals 2025. I went sticker crazy in this book. But my reading goals are: read a book from your birth year, read a book slowly, 1 chapter daily, read a book from your physical TPR, and in parentheses I got 25, so I will be picking 25 books from my physical TBR. Read a book with a group or join a challenge. Read a book to reach a goal of 52 or more. So my reading goal is 52 books. And this little quote says, "We'll look back and smile because it was life and we decided to live it." Come on, girl. Live, boo. This is my index page, and it is a tip in. So as I read, I will write the books down in here, and then by the end of the year I will probably type them up and tip them back in. We'll see. I may just leave it like that. It all depends on how bad my handwriting is. I got my book tracker ready to go. I haven't made a full plan yet as for my color schemes in here. If I want it to be audio book, ebook, physical book, 3 colors, or if I want to continue on with the way I did the last one, which is the color that I give the background of the page before I stick the cover page over. Here you see I have APEI, so that's audio book, physical book, ebook, or immersive read. Immersive is mixed media. That's when I do a physical book and an audio book together. And what I want to add here is book title, author, narrator, and theme. So before I write my summaries, I will add these 3 elements each time, and I have a little key down here at the bottom so that I remember what those mean. And just like with the other book, you have a lot of information in here on additions and suggestions of reads, but the difference here is that these books are diversity reads. And I've numbered all of the pages. All of the summary pages have been numbered. So that's what you have in this book. That's the difference between this book and the other book, is that it's diversity information in them. And you have also a page of little free libraries. I love that. And this book actually had writing in it when it came, so they ended up refunding my money. So I cut that page out, which takes 2 summary pages away. So I do have less summary pages in this one by 2. I like these because you're learning about more books as you are reading books. So you may find something here that you find interesting to read. You know, there are times when you just like, man, I have no idea what to read. Pull this book out and find a new read. It's a lot of feel like it's more of these. And Miss Jane Mount is the artist. This book is a little different because it's Jamise Harper and Jane Mount. But Jane Mount is the artist, just like the other book. These colors are really nice. Oh, I just noticed like they're giving props to the actual designers, cover page designers. And here's my next tracker page. I have to have 2 of these to equal up to the number of books inside of the thing here. And so here I have a little Dutch door here. You have my A to Z challenge, and in this book you will notice that I do have stickers everywhere so that my poor handwriting doesn't have to be endured. But you know the A to Z challenge, you have to read a book that begins with these letters. You can skip A, V, things like that, and go straight to the meat of the book. And I didn't want to lose this page, so I cut the header out and put it down here at the bottom. So that's all of the letters of the alphabet are here for the A to Z challenge. Now I'll probably put something artistic down here, or some stickers down there to hold some quotes or something, just to close out these 2 blocks on the bottom. And as you can see, I have a line here. That way the cover of the book goes here with the information about the book here. This page here is my series tracker. I know already that I have 2 series to finish, and that's the Gwendy's button box and the Bookstore Sisters. And this is my DNF graveyard. Some of the stickers have this like swerve. There are words under here, so I just put them upside down. So the words are actually upside down here, and then I put stickers on top because they look like gravestones to me. This is my Hall of Fame page. And again, I put the information about the book and then a book cover print out there. Here, books to check out. This is my page for quotes. So this is for smaller quotes that I can fit into these boxes here all the way around. And this one is for quotes that are longer, that need to be like written out. I put the Optimist Creed in here by Christian Larson because I really love the Optimist Creed. It was shared with me by a peer at work, and periodically I just pull it back out and review it. This is my monthly book list. So this is, January I read all these books, February I read all these books, and I'll put more stickers. And my reading reflections. What you'll notice here, if you look hard enough, I started running out of letters, and so these E's used to be B's, and I cut the curly parts off, that A was a V, and this R was a P. I was Frankensteining. I was Frankensteining these letters. But my reading reflections actually came from NetGalley. NetGalley released their printable journal. And it's free on NetGalley. So in their printable journal, they had a page of reading reflections. Favorite reading memory, favorite place to read, friend who gave the best book recs, book I recommended the most, favorite reading accessory, new or changed reading habits, goal I'm most proud of accomplishing. So that's my reading reflections. Terms, again, I made a T out of an I and a sliver from something. That was a B, that was a P. And, I'm just doing what I can with what I had left over. But this is my page for new term words that I encounter that I don't know. And I can increase my vocabulary. And then on these pages, this will be, again, my booktube journey for 2025. I won't list all of my thumbnails. I'm not sure what I'll put here, but I have these 2 pages for my reflections on my YouTube journey for the end of the year. I think that's something I'm supposed to put here. I can't remember what I wanted to put here, but it'll get there. So, let's see. I have a note of all the things I wanted that I wanted to add in here. As you can see, it's quite a bit. Even if you weren't one to do the Around the World Challenge, you absolutely could, because they've made it available. They've listed out books that you could read to help you do the Around the World Challenge. Ain't that cool? And then here, it act like that doesn't exist. I had something stuck here, and then when I peeled it off, it peeled off everything. But page 2 of the book bracket will be here. But the book bracket setup is the same as the book bracket setup for 2024. And then page 2 will be here. I just got to add it back in there. So that's, my friends. That's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And now I have to try and make sense of the longest review of books that I have ever done. This was so not how I intended to do this, but I couldn't stop myself once I started talking. So we'll see how this turns out in the end. And I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble on about books I read last year and my reading journal layouts. I hope you've been inspired at least a little bit. Bye. Stay safe, stay warm.